Paddy, let's run through Donegal's season so far. We're looking at 3 points from 3 games, win, draw and a loss. But there's probably a fair case to be made that Donegal should have them all won. So lost against Galway from a winning position, lost 2-8 to 2-7. It was a draw with Mayo, 19 points to 2-13, late goal for Mayo. And then of course the win over Meath, which was routine enough, 3-8 to 7 points. Fair case to be made that they should have won every game?
Certainly, definitely should have won 2 of the 3. I was in commentary with him and McGee for the Mayo match, and there were literally seconds left. The referee had went overtime, and Eamon said, surely we're not going to give away another goal, because Donegal have really struggled with Mayo since 2012 final, really lost 3 championship matches against them. That famous one last year in McGill Park, and then Kevin McLaughlin got an equaliser a few years ago to send Donegal down, and we thought surely not. And definitely that was a point drop, because Donegal actually played really well that night and dominated the game, gave away a poor goal in the first half.
That was a fluke too, you know what I mean? He was trying to put it over and it looped in.
Eamon McGee said at the time he thought he meant it, but looking back, definitely not. I think he was trying to defend his brother, maybe Neil, and maybe a couple of more defenders. Donegal were 7 points up against Galway in Letterkenny. Donegal's record in Letterkenny is beyond atrocious.
Why did they play there at all? Was it a weather thing?
Look, they just move it around. Ballyshannon, this is very south of the county, Ballyshannon, Bundoran, and that always gets a game. Letterkenny gets a game, and because the record is so bad, like Laois came up one year, beat Donegal there. Galway have won now a couple of times. Fermanagh beat them there. Kerry have beaten them. Roscommon were hammering Donegal a couple of years ago there. Donegal got it back late, so it's a really poor record. Look, I don't know. I don't blame Letterkenny on this occasion. I don't know, as a player does that seep into the mind in that? Because in local media there would be, and certainly among supporters, they would say, why are we going to Letterkenny? Our record's really bad there. Does that seep in?
I would say you'd want to be fairly mentally weak to be worried about that. Yeah, I mean, really, it's not going to put a ball over the bar for you. And you know the way they always say it's the same for both teams, the conditions, but you're more used to the venue. It shouldn't bother you at all.
It's not like soccer when, you know, a team's under huge pressure and you have 30,000 supporters giving you abuse at home. Sometimes they find it easier away from home. I don't think, look, there was a couple of frees missed that you would expect. I mean, Michael Murphy, who's been superb again in 2020, he's been our best player. He missed a free that he probably, any other day of the week, he would have scored. Kieran Thompson missed one which was further out. So look, it's not the end of the world, but definitely 7 points up against Galway with the breeze with 20-25 minutes left. Really should have closed that one down. And I suppose it's kind of, people are wondering, is it the defence? Is it too porous at the back? Donegal are still down a huge amount of bodies at the back. And
who are we talking about?
We're talking my own club man, Paddy McGrath, on the cruciate ligaments back against Mayo and Castle Bar.
Is he going to be back?
He's going to be back hopefully for the championship. It's impossible to get information these days. So we thought Owen Ban Gallagher wouldn't be back for another 3 months, and there he was lined out against Mayo. You have Stephen McMenamin, who's had surgery. He was brilliant last year.
Oh, very good against Clifford.
Picked up Clifford. Clifford got 2 points in play that day. But if you're playing Kerry and Clifford gets 2 points in play, happy days. If you keep
that's all I thought after that game. I was like, geez, this lad is made of serious stuff. Not only being picked to mark Clifford, they obviously rate him massively, but to actually do that job on him.
If you were told this year that you're going to keep Clifford to 4 points in play, you'd probably be happy enough. The man's ridiculous.
If he scores any less than 2-2, we're okay.
If he doesn't pick up a couple of yellow cards, you know. But no, Stephen McMenamin's a very good player. Tigerish. Declan Bonner pointed him out since he was an under 15 or 16. But Paddy McGrath came back last year in Division 2. He came on late on against Cork, and Michael Murphy came back against our man. Guys like that really steadied the ship, and they were huge players. I think there was a feeling that Neil McGee's 34 and playing really well. I would imagine, had Donegal not so many injuries at the back, that they would hope to bring the likes of Neil McGee back later. Unfortunately, they've had to use him much earlier. Dara O'Boyle from Gweedore missed the first couple of league games as well. Played a role the last day. So there is a feeling in Donegal that it's the defence, but they are playing a different system now than they did 3-4 years ago. So they probably are leaving slightly more gaps, but definitely when you're 7 points up, you have to be closing out those games. And there was a bit of an overreaction I felt in the Northwest. You know,
to the Galway game.
To the Galway game, there was a bit of an overreaction, but I think when you steady the ship, do many people remember matches back in February? You know, in
Probably
4 or
not.
5 months' time. I think everything's built on sensationalism now.
But I suppose it's if things go wrong in the summer, then that'll be stuck on the bill. You know,
Yeah.
as in like. But you saw what else went wrong.
Yeah.
You mentioned there that the system is quite different to what it was 3 or 4 years ago. I'm wondering, are you going back as far as McGuinness, or are you talking about the Rory Gallagher era?
Probably Rory Gallagher. I think McGuinness, those 3 or 4 matches where they played an all-out blanket of 14-15 behind the ball, okay? But Donegal did press high as well those years. You know, Michael Murphy, that Cork semi-final in 12, played in a very advanced role. McFadden was inside, McBrearty was inside. There were huge patches and matches where Donegal were leaving 3-4 up all the time. There was that infamous match against Dublin, unfortunately, in 2011, and I think the
You should
Antrim
never
match...
apologise for that.
And I
That
don't-
makes you competitive.
I don't think people... the outcry was
Nothing unfortunate about it.
It was unbelievable. And even there, somebody had a cut at Donegal this year and said they've gone very defensive again. I go to matches all over the country. Dublin the reality is Dublin at times bring 14 men behind the ball. And
Every game.
so do Kerry. Like, I was at both All-Irelands last year and I had out the camera and I said, you know what, I'm too angry as it is. I won't be putting anything on Facebook, Twitter, but I took a couple of pics and they both at times had 14-15 behind the ball. It just doesn't. Donegal have this name now because of a couple of guys that were on the state broadcaster a couple of years ago and it stuck. But the reality is all teams bring 14-15 behind the ball. All teams are cynical. Like, it's the top teams, and hurling as well, in terms of cynicality, not so much defensive play. But so I don't know why Donegal. It's just Dublin transitioning. They are incredible at transitioning.
Yeah.
The Corofin, I know they do. I love Corofin. I lived in Galway for 10-11 years and been a huge admirer. And they had to do what they had to do against Kilcoo, but at times they had to go to the dark side. So look, every team does it. I think Donegal, though, since Rochford came in, have definitely pressed higher. I think they have a couple of different game plans. We look at the Kerry game last year. For me, that was the game of the summer. I think it was 120 each.
Oh,
was it 118 each? I forget now, but
No, it was 120 each. It was
120 each, yeah. And they left 3-4 up at all times. I think when Donegal get their full squad back, I think when they play Tyrone and Ballybofey on the 15th of May, it could be quite defensive. But equally, I think if Donegal go on to play a Galway or a Kerry later on, I think they can play a variety of ways.
So you mentioned there that they're quite, or can be attack minded, and like we know about the great spread of attackers, Jamie Brennan, Michael Murphy, yada yada yada. But like there was actually a talk that Paddy McBrearty, he was in America there over the winter, that he mightn't be back, but he is back.
The initial rumours were when he was leaving first after the club championship that he's going to America, he's going for 9 months, he's going for a year, and then other people were saying no, he's going to be back. And I suppose at the time there was still question marks over Oran Manelis. So I was thinking of just packing in the GA commentary altogether. We're going to lose Oran Manelis and McBrearty.
But it was like a bit like Tyrone losing, or apparently losing Cathal McShane at the time before he did the U-turn.
Of course, when Conor McKenna's away, you know, a couple of years, and like I would say, Boner was just like, this can't be happening. But I'm sure Declan Boner probably knew the real story. So he's back. He's back a couple of weeks ago. He was working for a Donegal company in New York, so that kind of didn't help either, you know. People were wondering, oh, maybe he's going to stay on, but he is back. He didn't play the last day, but he's a huge player. Of course, he had that horrific injury 2 years ago, came back last year. And it's funny, he was good last year without being brilliant, but him being there makes such a difference. I just go back to the Tyrone game in the Ulster semi-final up in Breffni Park, and he was picked up by McNamee, and he was good enough, but at the same time what he done was he released Jamie Brennan. Jamie Brennan was on fire that day. And Brennan's this player in Donegal that everyone talks about Jamie Brennan, and they're expecting him to shoot 1-4, 1-5 every game. He does so many good things, and I think he's an excellent player. Sometimes the shooting can let him down, but I feel when McBrearty comes back, Brennan elevates that to that next level, and I think he's a huge player to have, and he's a huge support network for him to have inside, and they're two very dangerous players. I know club players at home say Brennan's an absolute nightmare to mark, given his pace.
But like you mentioned him and the effect that having McBrearty would be there. I think it's like James O'Donoghue's after coming back from Kerry, and like the opportunity for him is massive now, because defender number 1 is going to pick up Clifford, defender number 2 is going to pick up Gainey, defender number 3 is going to pick up James O'Donoghue. That's not an insult to him, that's an opportunity for him.
Too many fires to put out.
And yeah, that means Jamie Brennan is probably going to be target number 2. And if Michael Murphy did play inside, obviously someone with the physical makeup to be able to match him is going to have to go for him. Someone else is going to have to go for McBrearty, who's a bull. And then you have a rocket who's well stacked too in Jamie Brennan. I mean, that's serious options to have.
Yeah, and you've Oisín Gallen as well, who's out with, he's had surgery recently with a shoulder injury. And he's
is there still talk of the AFL with him, no?
That seems to have died down. Total censorship now in Donegal. No more playing now. He's dedicated to Donegal. No, he went on that 2-week, as we said here before, he went on that 2-week combine, I think to call it. So he's hopefully going to be back in 2-3 months, and he's an inside forward. This guy's top drawer. We've Niall O'Donnell from St Eunan's, who was fabulous in the club championship. He's a natural 11. Missed the first game with pneumonia. So all of those
pneumonia. That's retro.
I know, yeah.
That's old school.
That is old school. And he's an old school type player as well.
Yeah.
He's
I'm thinking of getting TB or something, maybe typhoid.
Go back to the 1920s, yeah. No, it's... Yeah, so I think Donegal, I think similar to Kerry. Maybe not, they're not at Kerry's level. I think Donegal's, where their forte is, definitely up front. It's the 3 or 4 very, very exciting players. But as I said, Jamie Brennan, last year in Ulster, he was just shot the lights out, you know, and I think he's having a good season so far. So looking forward to getting Paddy McBrearty back, and if Donegal can get him back into the form that he was in 3-4 years ago, could be a very, very good year. But so you're looking at Niall O'Donnell at 11. When Gallen comes back, and hopefully he comes back and he's fine, if you can play Michael Murphy in a more advanced role, McBrearty, Jamie Brennan, it is exciting in that department.
So if you were to take out the needs of the team, what's Murphy's best position if you could play him there? Like, and we have to take them attack and mark into consideration too, and not that horrible one he had against Mayo whereby it was a kick pass that was 20 yards, and it was the really antithesis of what it was for. It's not blaming Murphy, it's just the way it is.
Oh yeah. It was a symptom,
it's a rule that wasn't thought through fully, and that's the unintended consequence. But you know, what's his best position? If you're Michael Murphy and being selfish about your own qualities, where would he want to play?
I asked Eamon McGee this, who has soldiered with him for so many years with Donegal.
And marked him in training.
And here's the great paradox in all of this. Eamon McGee said, for Donegal, it's very important that he's around the middle third and goes in for 5 or 10 minutes rather. So I said to him, if you're playing against him at club level, Guido or Glen Swilly, where would you rather see him? And he said, out around the middle every day of the week. So he said he has to go inside for 10 to 15 minute spells at county level, and he's very dangerous in there, but yet at club level he'd say, I'd prefer him, we love seeing him out the field. So there's a bit of a contradiction there in that a lot of people...
Because county teams would love to see him out the field.
I think that Donegal have a number of very good players coming up in the middle third. Now, Hugh McFadden's been there a while, but Michael Langan's really coming strong. Jason McGee's been out now with a long-term injury as well. He's had a lot of injuries in the last, if you like, year, 18 months.
He missed that Kerry game last year.
Yeah. He's huge. Him and Hugh McFadden actually went off that day. He's a huge player. I think when you see Michael Langan, Kieran Thompson can kind of drop back further back to midfield. Hugh McFadden and Jason McGee, they're a lot of big players. I think when they fully develop, I'm talking Jason McGee and Michael Langan in another year or two, and as Michael Murphy gets older, he's 31 in August, I think in 2-3 years Murphy could prolong his career even beyond 2-3 years when he can play in a more advanced position. Like, a lot of Donegal people are always saying, just stick him inside. I remember those 2 Monaghan Ulster finals, 13 and 15, where he played in a very advanced role in those 2 days, but he wasn't getting the ball, and he was surrounded by a blanket defence. And if he's not getting the ball, what can you do there? You're just wasting the player then.
But are there enough players in the middle of the field, like you're just describing a few of those players, but right now, is there enough out the field to get the ball into him?
Probably not. He's far played 50. He's probably played 50. Now, when you're on commentary, it's hard sometimes to evaluate this. He's probably played 50% inside this year and 50% out. Certainly against Meath and Galway, it was 50% each. He seems to go in on his own bat for 10 and 15 minute spells, and like, he was kind of around the 11. He played around the 11 last year against Kerry. Now that, for me, arguably one of the greatest games he's ever played for Donegal. But it's the same as Joe Canning, and we said this before Christmas, Shane. We met and we were chatting. It's the same as Joe Canning years ago. Where do you play him? He's so important, no matter where you have him. You know, but
you just have to have him in the game.
Like, he's an unbelievable midfielder. Like, the reality is, it's not that. But you are robbing Peter to pay Paul. But I mean, he's an incredible midfielder. It's because he was there in his early years for Donegal at 14. Everyone just thought that he was a 14. But he's also a fantastic midfielder as well, and played a lot of underage at midfield. So he's both. Is
there any concern about Jamie Brennan coming back from what was a very quiet All-Ireland series last year? He was so good in Ulster, and I thought this lad's a nailed on All-Star, and then the form kind of it just went away from him after that. Do you see any signs that he's recovered from that and that he's going to be fine come summer again?
I think so, yeah. It's funny you say that, because in the Meath game in the Super 8s, you know, he was well man-marked. Meath do have good man-markers. He still got 3 points from play that day, which is decent shooting, and they came at important times as well. He missed a few that day. He was quiet against Kerry. There's no doubt. He won 2 very important frees at the end. It just didn't happen for him. And the Mayo game, bar Michael Murphy, nobody showed up really that day. Maybe 1 or 2 played okay, but I think, as I said, when Jamie Brennan gets more help, I think Jamie Brennan's going to have another big year. He's a confidence player, but what forward isn't a confidence player? He's
still young too.
He's still young, yeah. He was in that minor team a couple of years ago, and he's a great guy. He's in terrific shape. He looks small, but he's really, really stocky. He's like yourself, Shane. You know, he lives.
Not small.
He lives in the gym. So I think, and he's a wonderful attitude, a fantastic attitude. So a lot of that, it's gas too. 15, 20 years ago, when players had 1 or 2 bad games in a row, it just never got the hype that it does now. Every player is just under the microscope in every single game. We've went like soccer in that regard. Like Ryan McHugh didn't have his best game against Mayo last year, and that lingered on for a couple of months after McHugh wasn't there. You know, it's insane, and yet Ryan's been awesome this year so far. You know, so look, Donegal are, I think they're between the 2nd and 5th. I think Dublin are. Everyone's talking about Kerry are the next team to Dublin. I think Kerry are going to go very well this year. I don't think there's much though between Kerry, Donegal, Tyrone, Mayo, and Galway. I really think if they were all in a group together away from Dublin, I think it would be very, very close. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
McNeilish, what do you think happened there? The talk is heading to London for a spell.
Yeah, again, there's been a lot of talk of going to America, going to London. He hasn't committed, and that's fine. And it's a huge loss, you know. I remember the first match, the McKenna Cup game, I was in commentary, and I was going to ask Boner about it, but he was asked about 5,500 times, I think, in the previous couple of weeks. So everybody decided to just call it a day on that. Yeah, so look, it's hard to know will he ever come back, to be honest, for Donegal now. That's his 3rd year overall that he's opted out, and you know, I suppose unfortunately for him, he's just a fabulous player and just doesn't want to do it. Look, he's if he's around later on in the year in August, September, he'll play club football. It's such a pity. He's one of the best players in Donegal. I mean, probably behind Murphy, Ryan McHugh. Sean Patton now has become a huge player for Donegal, but Oren Manelis is tucked in there as well. So it's a huge, huge loss. And I was talking to a soccer coach a couple of months ago as well, and he said, like, you want to see him playing soccer as well. He said, just gifted. And I said, where would you play him? And he said, you could play him anywhere. You could play him anywhere. You could play him centre half, up front, midfield. He's just a gifted player, and a really nice guy, and very gentle player, or a very gentle person. He's look, it's a huge pity, and he's a massive player. But I think a lot of people weren't expecting him to come back this year, so it's kind of drawn. There's a line being drawn over it now.
Who's got a better left foot, him or Kieran Thompson?
Oren Manelis, I'd say.
Yeah.
Oren Manelis, yeah.
Thompson has a fair foot as well.
Oh, he's a class player, yeah. I won't be allowed to drive through Glenties again. They're the local rivals. No, I'd say Oren Manelis. I think Oren Manelis is one of the sweetest left foots in the country. It's old school, it's cultured, and wonderful leap as well. I think Kieran Thompson is really adding a lot to his game this year. And when I say that, Eamon McGee again, to quote him, to mention Eamon McGee's name again, he says, we always knew how good Thompson was, but it's like his work rate has went up another level. So, and he was huge for Niamh Connell last year as well. But no, I'd probably go for Oran Manelis on that. He's kind of the old Colin McFadden kind of left foot, you know, different players, but just doesn't look like he's doing a huge amount of work, but just strikes it over. I'm not sure the GPS stats would be out the window, but no, he's a huge loss, and what a player for Guido. Like,
is, you know, the way, like, over the years people talked about the amount of time that Donegal players would have commuting back home to Donegal, some lads living in Dublin, etc., etc. Is there much of that going on this year?
There's about 6 or 7 between Maynooth and Dublin, and it's a huge factor. Like, my own clubman Paddy McGrath, to give you an example, a few years ago was living in Dublin, and he was driving home 2 to 3 times a week after work. And not every company, not every boss or CEO or construction manager is huge into the GA. Some are, you know, like Keystone there, for example. They might be interested. Not all have empathy towards GA players, and so he was travelling, like, to Ardra. I mean, when you consider it, there's always traffic on a Friday or on Thursday evening. You go through Virginia, you're looking at 4 hours really. By the time you stop for 5-10 minutes, to Convoy, what, 3.5 hours, that's where they train most of the time. Letterkenny, you're still touching on 4 hours. So they were finishing work at 4 or 5 o'clock, driving to training and coming back, getting up for work the next day. Like, Nathan Mullins was doing it there for a while, Brian Mullins' son, yeah, and he turned actually to a friend of mine that would know a lot of the St Vincent's players, and he said, like, I actually had no idea. He goes, this is insane. It's so tough to travel. Like, it wears and tears the body. And no, I was never good at football, couldn't even start for the minor club team, but I'm doing a lot of driving at the moment, and even I'm picking up injuries. But apparently now there is a correlation between injuries and travel, but it is a huge disadvantage.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know Mayo have 12 guys, I think, in the greater Dublin area, and they meet in Athlone, is it, for training? I think they might have used Abbottstown once or twice as well.
I know the likes of Longford did have groups meeting up there.
Mayo, like, you take Belmullet, South Kerry. I'm not sure how many Kerry guys are outside Kerry, because you have Cork on one side, you have Waterford on the other. Maybe a lot go there. Well, Waterford's still a big drive from Kerry.
Do you know, I know last year, it was 2 years ago, that John Divley, who was over the UCD team, he had little small training groups during the league, which consisted at one point of Jack Barry of Kerry, Owen Curran of Galway, or is it Cairns? And then there was a couple of more others. But, like, that's how players needs must scenario. Anyway, that's just a cut.
No, but it's like, and you end up driving faster, and you end up just not looking after yourself, and it's kind of a contradiction of what they're supposed to be doing. Like, I actually think it's dangerous. Like, it's because at that time there was 7 or 8 Donegal guys in the Dublin area, and it's very tough. Look, if you're a student and you're doing a soft enough course, like any of the courses I've ever done, you're probably okay. You can miss 1 or 2 lectures here and there, let's be honest. A lot of them do, but the travel's a huge factor. Like, in the way the game's gone, like, I was reading there, Mayo, when they go to Athlone, something like cost 2,500 extra for a session. They bring 44 people to Athlone from Mayo, including backroom staff, not including the guys coming from Dublin. So it's not just, it's the wear and tear, it's the financial cost. It's very difficult. Even Tipperary, you're coming from South Tipperary to Dublin, it's a fair trek as well.
Well, I'm North Tipperary, and I never want that confused.
North Tip, yeah, I know you're North Tip. From all my days going to Munster finals, of course I know North Tip. No, but yeah, look, Niall O'Donnell's in Maynooth, Paddy McBrearty's back in Dublin, so there's a couple of them there. So it's Brendan McCall, who's captain, of course, at DCU, and the one, the Sigerson, the full back, he's up here. So there are a few guys, and it's definitely, it must be great having everybody at home. I know a couple of the Dublin guys say, well, look, we go to training here and there and we're stuck in traffic. I don't think it's the same.
It's definitely not the same. The M50 is bad, but if you have to go M50 and then go the whole way across the width of the country, that's far worse. I want to ask you about Sean Patton, because you mentioned how important he is. Now, there's 5 goals, sorry, there's 2 goals, 3 goals. Sorry, no, sorry, there's 5 goals, 4 goals conceded. Jeez, I'm all over the shop here.
That's right,
there's 4 goals conceded in 3 games. So not saying any of them are falling at his door. But why is he so important, or why is he so good?
Yeah, first of all, do you know he made his League of Ireland debut at 16? Just to kind of give you a bit of a caveat and kind of a background to him, there was big talks that he was actually going to go across channel, and I would say he imagined it himself. He is turning into an incredibly important player for Donegal. I think it's because Donegal had Paul Durkin a few years ago. Jim McGuinness, obviously Jim Gavin was always with goalkeepers, and he had Stephen Cluxon. Jim McGuinness was obsessed with kickouts. Obsessed with him, and again he's from the neighbouring club, and I would have talked to him a few times in the last few years in those episodes of kickouts. So Donegal knew the importance of having an important goalkeeper, and we were very, very spoiled in that we had Paul Durkin, and now we have Sean Patton, and his retention rate last year was nothing short of ridiculous. I think going into the Mayo game in Castlebar, 93% retention rate off his kickouts, and watch him, it's unbelievable what he's doing.
And is this like picking little windows and not?
Oh yeah, it's not. We're not talking short kickouts. We're talking shouting out here. Michael Murphy or Jason McGee makes a move out there, and he's just pinging it to them. It's like a golf ball, like Rory McIlroy firing it onto a green in a par 3, and hitting the halfbacks. He's just so good now. Obviously, when you're at the big championship matches, you're not walking around the pitch. But I remember last year covering a couple of McKenna Cup games, and I was watching Patton, and he literally, all the team are on the bus ready to go, or they're getting their various cars away, and he's the last man out doing his kickouts. He seems to be an ultra perfectionist, and I suppose that comes from a soccer background as well. And just to give you, I suppose, on that there, on the goals conceded, no, that absolutely would have nothing to do with Patton. There's some poor tackles went in the last game, really, for Galway's goals, but he is an excellent shot stopper as well. I mean, being a soccer keeper, you expect them to be good shot stoppers. And there used to be this talk, and there's kind of a narrative going around years ago, that a good soccer goalkeeper, and a few goalkeepers, they'd say, well, there can be dangers under a high ball because it's slightly different, and that they're usually fisting it in soccer. But he's incredible under a high ball, and he doesn't look that tall. He plays for the Guards this year. He's very good off placed balls. But Patton, I mentioned Michael Murphy, Ryan McHugh. Patton now is Patton's right up there as well. Like, as I said, what Donegal scored last year off Patton's kickouts was nothing short of outstanding. Like, he's very, very important.
How old is he now? 23 or 4? Is he?
Looking this up the last day. Yeah, he's around that. Yeah.
Good player, all right. What about?
He was on the books at a couple of games. He was on the books at Sligo Rovers, Finn Harps, and Derry City.
Obviously, fairly good. But like, when you're commentating on these Donegal games for Ocean FM, do you get nervous watching them? Do you find yourself getting carried away ever? Because I've seen the Donegal journalists in the press box, and I always talk about the Kildare game in 2011. The Donegal journalists around me were going absolutely insane in the press box, as in like almost fist pumping at me, and I had no skin in the game. But like,
there's a lot of bad language used. Luckily we have Austin O'Callaghan's our head of sport, and he's got these nice lip mics that the using the BBC and all the top commentators. So the minute you move it away from the mouth, if you did accidentally give out a swear word, it's not picked up. And I'm being serious here. It's actually not picked up. I would get nervous. Yeah, I would. I really enjoyed the Kerry match last year. It was the most enjoyable one I've ever commentated on. But there would be, I remember the Tyrone game a couple of years ago, and Tyrone got a goal, and there was all the local stations were here, RTE News Talk, and just the big bang on the table, like when Tyrone got the goal, and everybody let out one or two words that I don't want to repeat here, but you would get nervous, yeah. You do. There's no such thing as being impartial in the GEA. You try and implement it and incorporate it into your commentaries. However, it's very difficult when you're commentating. You do get, I would get nervous, but you just try and keep the head. The Kerry game last year, though, that was unbelievable. Really enjoyed that. And when you lose, it's very disappointing, because on local radio, I mean, when you lose on local radio, your own season's over as well. You've gapped them to the club championship. Yeah. It's like you've been knocked out yourself, because you're going in McKenna Cup. You're going from early January to whenever they're knocked out. So it's a big. So yeah, I would get nervous. Yeah, would you get nervous watching Tipperary?
Well, I haven't done. Well, I've only done live co-commentary once for Midland Radio last summer when Tip were playing Laois. and Tipperary was going to beat Laois. But I just, so I wasn't nervous during that, but I was just frustrated because of how they were playing. So I spent the whole game giving out. I'd say if I listened back to it, no Tipperary person.
I had to do a club game before our draw. We're doing it, and I'd done the last 10 minutes, and they conceded a couple of late goals, and there'd be quite a big following in our draw for championship matches, and Bundoran got away that day with a 3-point win and knocked our draw out. So I was commentating, and everyone was kind of looking at me, and I had to praise Bundoran as well, and that was quite difficult. So, but look, that's it. But yeah, no, I would definitely get nervous. The Donegal, there's a huge amount of media in Donegal, like it's like Rupert Murdo's empire. We've a strong an empire in the northwest. There's huge, because it's a huge county. Like you've Inishowen up the very top, and that's a massive area. You've South Donegal, which is Ocean FM, Radio on the Gwilt, then you've Highland Radio up the top, and you've so many newspapers as well. But you see, it's such a vast county. Like it's quite regional as well. So yeah.
Final question then: outside of Donegal and maybe your neighbouring counties, then Mayo there. You said you lived in Galway before as well. What do you make of their chances this year? Galway, I think they're going to come up short. Here's a very interesting one, okay? The Super 8s this year, the Munster champions and the Leinster champions are in together. So, barring something insane happening... So Cork are in with Dublin?
We're talking about Wicklow and Clare, yeah. No, so look, I mean, it's going to be Kerry Dublin, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
unless Cork...
Might be a year too early, but
year too early. I don't think so. So, you're going to have the Ulster champions and the Connacht champions in the Super 8s group, so that's going to make things very interesting. In that already, you know, hypothetically speaking, Kerry get Dublin. Let's say you throw in another good team into that. Let's say
Tyrone
or Tyrone or Donegal, the losers of that, the losers of Mayo Galway, they could be in that there. So you're going to have an extremely throw one more team into that, and you have a horrific
group of death.
But here's the deal. See, with the new, what a lot of people are not talking about, with the new structure of the championship this year, whoever loses between Donegal and Tyrone in the first round to Ulster, there's not as many backdoor games anymore. You've only like 2 games until you get back into, I think, is it the last 8 or something like that, into the Super 8, so maybe 3. It's not like last year you had to win, or the year before you would win 4 or 5 matches. It's not going to be a great disadvantage this year. However, you still want to go on. Donegal have never done a 3 in a row. So do I give back to Galway? I'm digressing. I think Galway will win Connacht this year. They're going to put themselves in a very good position. Pádraig Joyce is doing all the right things at the moment. Seems to be a bit of a crowd pleaser. He's naming his teams really early. People love that. He's bringing them on 1 or 2 bonding sessions. I think they had a night out.
He's talking them up.
He's talking them up. He's listening to loads of podcasts, and he's just doing what they want him to do. He's playing the game the right way. It'll be very interesting. Look, Mayo, I could see Mayo supporters seem a little bit concerned this year. They think that ship may have sailed, and that the guys that are coming to the winter of their careers and they're moving on, and the guys that are coming through, it may take another 2 or 3 years.
I couldn't disagree with that. I think it's going to take another year before, you know, James Durk and James Carr, a couple more of these guys become, you know, the lads that were dominating in the previous years. And I think some of the guys who were fairly dominant against all bar Dublin, they're probably just on the wrong side of the hill at this point.
Probably hard for James Horan. He probably just couldn't turn it down either. He saw the opening. Managers find it almost impossible not to go back, don't they? And some of my old supporters wondering, did he make a mistake in going back? I don't think they have enough. They've had incredible teams, and we look back in 20 years and ask how did Keith Higgins, Colin Boyle, definitely Andy Moore, and he's gone. How do these guys not have All Irelands?
I'd love to think they would make a push for it. I mean, there's a certain cohort of people out there who love Mayo's misery. I'd actually love to see them win one. But
they didn't have, look, they beat Donegal in the last Super 8s last year, but they didn't have a good year. That papered over, I think, what was, like Donegal actually had a really good year last year. They won Ulster, okay, they drew with Kerry, beat Meath comprehensively in the end. Donegal lost 1 game last year. Like, Mayo got tanked down in Kerry.
And by Roscommon.
Was it Roscommon beat them as well? So, as I said, I think that papered over a few cracks. I fancy Galway to come out of Connacht. The winners of Donegal, Tyrone's going to probably win Ulster, although the winners play Armagh, Derry. You wouldn't know, but you'd fancy them. Monaghan haven't gone away. They have a good backroom team. Banty's back in there, and there were eyebrows raised there. I've done a co-commentary with Banty last year. He's He's some character, so he is, but he's a very good, I'm not sure what he's like tactically, and there's been criticism about him tactically, and he's away from the game a long time, but he seems to be a good delegator, and he's assembled a good team around him. You've Donnelly, you've Conor Laverty there, so they don't seem to have gone away. Still an over-reliance on Conor McManus, though, so look, the big talk is Dublin. I mean, look at them in the first league game this year. Right, they played 9 of the All-Ireland team, but there was 8 or 9 guys out that were not available, and I mean, it was ridiculous.
So Dublin Donegal this weekend. What do you want to see from Donegal in Croke Park?
I think they're going to press them high and really go at them. I think it's going to be a very high scoring game once the weather is anyway okay. I think Donegal are going to really go at Dublin.
So
I
do you
expect
think they'll
something
hold
like
back for the summer, or do you think we're going to see exactly what Donegal
I think we're going
like?
to see Stephen Rochford a couple of years ago when he was Mayo coach going right at Dublin, pushing right up. I think I'm going to give him the curse now. I think Jamie Brennan's going to have a very good game. Looking forward to seeing Paddy McBrearty back. I forgot to mention Mohan Van Gallagher's back. Yeah. Huge. Put Aidan O'Shea on his backside a few weeks ago. Small. He is class. He's the real deal. Play cornerback, can play wing back. He's a speed merchant, very comfortable on the ball. I think Donegal are going to push right up. I think you could see a similar game to Kerry last year, but Dublin just look to be in second, third gear. They don't seem to be...
Yeah, I wonder about this, because they've drawn 2 or 3 games, won the other. Is this a Dublin team that's, hasn't all its training done yet, is going to build and be brilliant come summer, or even towards the end of the league? Or are we seeing cracks appear? Like you're talking about, like we've talked about how Mayo, some of their best players are probably towards the latter end, are some of Dublin's, and some of the guys who come through in the last year or two, they have been brilliant and hit the ground running. But maybe not all of them are top level, and once the experience leaves and they're asked to kind of hold up the mantle themselves, maybe there's going to be a transition period.
Yeah, do you remember under Gavin for the first few years, they never really lost matches, even a couple of dead rubbers at the end. I know Monaghan beat them. They usually didn't lose matches. Then last year they were going for the 5, and they started losing a few matches, and those words were used as well. Are there a few cracks appearing? Okay, but this time the cracks may be different because we have a new manager in Desi Fard. Some pressure on Desi Fard. It's incredible. But Shane, they have to fall asleep someday. When I mean fall asleep, could we see them someday actually falling asleep in a Kerry, a Donegal, a Galway actually going on and walloping them? Surely they're not professional.
Can't see the walloping happening, but the way they fell.
A 4, 5, 6 points.
But the way they fell behind against Monaghan, I'm struggling to think when did that ever happen under Jim Gavin? And I don't know that it did.
Cork may have took a big lead years ago.
Yeah,
and
I think Derry did one day also, and then Dublin came back and wiped the floor with them. And again, Dublin came back. So are you looking at the plus side for Dublin? You came back, or are you looking at the downside? Why did you go so far behind? That's very unlikely.
Yeah, young Bulger looks to be a good player. They're not probably getting a huge amount of Conor McHugh so far, but. They're still bringing a lot of guys back, but look, Stephen Cluxton, by all accounts, we all know how good he is, but I met Jim McGuinness at the opening of a hotel at the start of last year, and we're just having a conversation, and I asked him about Cluxton, and we know how good he is, but I was like, what level of prep you putting into him? And he just nodded his head. He goes, you have no idea. He goes, this guy, if Dublin ever go down a level or two, it's going to be Stephen Cluxton, and probably Jim Gavin. Now Jim Gavin's moved on, but by all accounts, players and coaches and these guys are forensically look at it. Everybody goes after Cluxton. I think you have some chance, but I don't know. They're a remorseless machine.
But I know about Dublin that, and every team obviously does their in-game statistics. But let's say a couple of, they'll identify the trends during the middle of the game, and a kick out or two might go wrong, and the word will be sent down to Cluxton. Look, if you hit it down the left-hand side between the 245s, we've won 4 out of 4 kickouts out there. That's where you stay going. That sort of in-game stuff is happening. It's probably happening for all teams, but that was happening 4 or 5 years ago. So
I'd say their level of professionalism. I heard an interview with Johnny Cooper a few days ago, and they talk about getting everything off to a tee. It was when he was sent off in the All-Ireland final, and he was very aware at the time when he was sending off to have positive body language for the subs, because there was still 5 or 6 subs to be used. I think it was 6 at the time, and he goes, very important now when I'm walking off that these guys see me being positive and it doesn't lead to any negative. And I was kind of going, wow, when they're all now showing up to training earlier, Cluxton set the template there, now they're all doing it, but look, they have to, they have to someday be beaten, but it's probably not going to happen in Leinster for another 10 years.
Oh, it's very hard to see it in Leinster.
I don't think they're going to push further on. But I think, we said this before, Shane, if they do fall asleep and they do lose, they probably could come back and win another 3 in a row. But Kerry's forwards are ridiculous. Stephen O'Brien, Sean O'Shea, he played a little bit midfield. You could have Sean O'Shea at 11. You've Stephen O'Brien there, Spillane, Paul Geaney and David Clifford. James O'Donoghue back to form. Look, Kerry could have beat them last year the first day. We were both there that day. Kerry could have beaten them. Okay, Johnny Cooper's red was a huge part of that, but I think the worry is that when Dublin do lose, are they going to come back and just win another 3 or 4 in a row?
It's kind of like when Kilkenny finally were stopped in 2010. Everyone thought, okay, this will be the end of changing of the guard. They won 4 of the next 5, and then realistically, 14 and 15, someone should have stopped them then. Tip and Galway both should have been winning All Irelands around then, but it kind of happened because teams were so downtrodden, browbeaten by them for so many years. It took them probably a couple of extra years to build up the confidence to actually beat. So they might win a few All Irelands just on the legacy of how good they were.
Can I ask you on that? My mum's a Clare woman, so I go to a lot of Ireland.
She's in for more misery.
I go to a lot of Ireland myself, but you take JJ Delaney, Jackie Turl, Tommy Wadge, these defenders, like they were 3 golden defenders, right? You take Dublin, James McCarthy, Johnny Cooper, Jack McCaffrey. But is it the same thing in that Dublin have this professional undercurrent of a conveyor belt coming through, that when Kilkenny, those guys were always going to move on, the next guys weren't coming through, but because of Dublin's professionalism and sports science, is it slightly different?
Yeah, definitely, because I even did a few videos about this last week, that Kilkenny were so far ahead in terms of preparation. They were ticking boxes in terms of preparation that other counties didn't even know existed. So they brought in Mick Dempsey, who was like running sports science, if I can just generally call it that, in Carlow IT. He'd been manager of Laois footballers, he'd been 9-time county title winner, and he basically brought in all this physical preparation with Kilkenny, turned them into a Gaelic football team in terms of how the wing forwards went back, they choked up channels in midfield, and they had men who take you on up front. I mean, they were like superb, and other teams were going around just hitting the ball 50-50 up the field, and Kilkenny were saying, hey, we don't do tactics. Do you know this sort of crack?
They all bring the hurl to school, and they're just naturally good hurlers.
So I mean, I kind of went a long way around it by just saying that they were so physically prepared, so brilliantly physically prepared, and then obviously they had great talent coming through. There's no doubt about that, and they would have won All Irelands no matter what happened. But they got a few handy ones too, because other teams were going around like club teams versus this inter-county level of preparation. You probably identify that in football too. There's like Dublin up here, and then there's teams preparing on a level beneath them, and all the players that they've brought through the last couple of years, they will have been exposed to this level of preparation. They'll have been exposed to that intensity of training, so when they come through, then they're at a much higher level than a young lad in a different county who hasn't experienced that. Yeah,
and sometimes it's that's very interesting about Kilkenny, because a lot of people would have just thought that they just go out and hurl and they play man for man, and you know what I mean. I know they butchered a few teams, Limerick and that in finals and that, but that's interesting because a lot of Dublin people would say, it's nothing to do with professionalism, it's great players, and yet they do avail off the best sports science out there. If it wasn't important, why would they have them? Like, why would they have them? Not to get into figures and that, but I spent so sad my life is the last couple of days I was reading about the annual report. Like, Dublin only had to fundraise something like 88,000 last year, whereas other counties, Donegal, Roscommon, and that are trying to sell houses and that, and that's not sustainable. So going down the line, if Dublin can keep putting in those resources into it, which they're going to do, capitalism is never going to come back unless we've GA socialist revolution. It's only going to get more and more. Are the gaps then going to come, or I don't know, is it just going to come down to the quality of player?
You can't even blame Dublin for availing of these sponsorship opportunities. No. Like last week, Mitsubishi signed a deal with them to be official car partner, and you can't blame them. But unfortunately, other counties are never going to have that same sort of lure.
Yeah, and I know Ger Brennan said you've a huge, area there in the north inner city where they've 140,000 people in a particular area, and you've only 1 or 2 GA clubs. Soccer's really big, and that is true. He's articulating a very important point, but you still have the numbers there. You still have.
Sure, soccer's huge in Donegal.
Soccer's huge in Donegal. Like, I mean, up in the Inishowen direction, particularly North Donegal, soccer's huge. Just a lot of players as well. Now, Seamus Coleman came from South Donegal, and then you take counties like Cork, where rugby is really big, Rugby's getting really big in Galway, so it's all relative. But Dublin do have the...
Let's keep rugby down.
You see, I think that's... Yeah, and it's very interesting you mentioned Kilkenny. They're using Gaelic football. I thought Kilkenny tipping parts of Cork that Gaelic football was a word that you weren't allowed to use. You had to go to confession after. Jim McGinnis used to talk about basketball and used to get slated by some of the purists in inverted commas. What do you... sure, there you go, he's using basketball. But your Dublin do as well.
They had a basketball coach in there. It'd be silly not to, because there's so many of the fundamentals of that game can be used in your own. Why wouldn't you?
I think, yeah, exactly. I think Dublin's argument, going back to the original point, was when Jack McCaffrey, a long way off going away, but when Stephen Cluxton, Jack McCaffrey, Dermot Connolly, James McCarthy, and these guys move on, maybe the next quality of player won't be as good as that, but they certainly can get the average players to become that much better. It's going to take a ridiculous performance to beat them. Like, I remember 2 years ago, Donegal kept, between Kilkenny, Con O'Callaghan, Costello and Mannion, I think they had them all from 1 point in play, and Owen Merchant and Niall Scully absolutely destroyed Donegal in about 10 minutes, you know, so, or Brian Howard rather, sorry, not Owen Merchant, but that's what you're dealing with. It's going to take an almighty performance to beat them. We were just slagging there one day, myself and a few of my friends, we were saying, the one time you don't probably want to beat them is in the semi-final though. Imagine beating them in the semis.
Oh Jesus. Being the team that beats them and then you get taken out in the final. No thanks. And this weekend, do you expect win, lose, draw?
Going to go for a draw. That's setting on the fence, whatever. No, I think it's going to...
Three draws for Dublin?
No. Do you know what? I think Donegal could win this weekend. I think it's going to be really, really high scored. I think it's going to... Wait till you see now. I'll be talking to you now in a few weeks. It'll end up 6-5. Worst game of all time. No scores from play.
Well, that's brilliant stuff, Paddy. Let us know what you think of Donegal's chances this year and how they'll get on at the weekend. Man, Paddy.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks for watching Our Game. Don't forget to like and share the videos, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe.